It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Craig, I would like to start with you. I think many people were predicting, and it still could happen, that former President Donald Trump will be indicted as in terms of the scandal with Stormy Daniels, hush money. That hasn't happened yet, but we are getting reports that Trump would relish the opportunity to be handcuffed and taken to a police station. Of course, this all plays into the 2024 presidential campaign. Is this a good or bad thing for the country to have Trump indicted, is the question.
I think part of the short answer is it's not a good thing. To have, I think, any individual indicted for a crime involving a porn star. Let's go back for a minute just for a minute or two to 2016, when then candidate Trump and his lawyer, and later the White House, the Wall Street Journal would establish that once Trump was in the White House, the Wall Street Journal would establish that some 36 people knew of efforts directed by then candidate Trump to silence Stormy Daniels, the porn star, and Linda McDougal, I think it was, a Playboy Playmate of the Year, with whom he had a year-long relationship. In both cases, monies were directed through a news organization, National Enquirer news organization, to pay off the first individual, the Playboy Playmate of the Year, to the tune of over $100,000. And when Stormy Daniels surfaced, the publishers refused to do it because it involved a porn star. So they had to find a way to do this. Trump is recorded as talking about setting up a company to pay off these people. Out of frustration, his lawyer, to get it done, uses his own money and is then paid back almost double to cover his tax records. And that's all done by Trump's company. And the lawyer, concerned about his own situation, recorded then candidate Trump and all of this. Now, it's just kind of a juicy story, except for the fact that as a candidate for the presidency, these activities are in violation of federal election law. And because you have so many people involved in this, because you have the candidate on tape, it seems to me little doubt that a case could be made that there were these violations of federal election law, but that's what we will learn probably next week, I guess, or the jurors have decided. The fact of the matter is, it's bad all around. It is very bad to be found in violation of the federal election law for any reason, but particularly paying off people who want to tell a bad story about you. And it seems almost disqualifying in terms of a second campaign. We've had enough conversations here for our viewers to know that neither Al nor I are very enthusiastic about Donald Trump, either as president or as a candidate. It seems to me that there looks to be less enthusiasm even among his supporters in answering the call to protest. I guess if the judgment's handed down next week, we'll know. But I think we're getting, as we've said before, just the numbers of people who will support Donald Trump are dwindling. I had my only other reflection on this is, to me, these actions are disqualifying. And the sad thing is that people who continue to rise in support of Trump must do so because of a real distrust and animosity towards, the government, the federal government, and the political system in general. I can't think of any other reason. And it's as though this is their guy, no matter what the issues are surrounding him, that he's going to take on the administration. But I think those numbers are dwindling, and it probably It probably boosts other candidates on in Republican primary process. It has to dry up his ability to raise campaign funds at some point. So I think if this isn't the final nail, it's we're getting to the point where his candidacy just is not something that could be sustained.
You know, Al, speaking of fundraising, I think Trump made almost $2 million, like within 12 hours of him saying that he was going to be arrested. So right now, that might be something in his favor. But what's your take? I mean, the Democrats should be pretty happy about this, no matter what.
My take is we just ought to sit back and be patient and watch all this play out. All the attention right now is on the Manhattan DA and the Stormy Daniels case. But let's remember that there are 4 criminal investigations involving Trump that are going to play out over the next few months, and maybe 2 or 3 of them over the next few weeks. We have obviously the Manhattan DA and Stormy Daniels, but also we have the Georgia case where he tried to overturn the election by asking the Secretary of State to find votes illegally. We have the Mar-a-Lago documents case, which is really more in Trump's, from what I can tell, Trump's role is more an obstruction of justice case, which makes it different than the issues involving Vice President Pence and President Biden in the classified documents, and then the whole issue of his role on January 6th. It's likely that if the DA in New York decides to move ahead with an indictment, could come today, could come next week. That's likely to be the first, but it's also probably the least serious crime in many ways that Trump is charged with. But I think the Georgia case could come very soon, an indictment there. And yesterday, Trump suffered a major setback in the Mar-a-Lago case, obstruction case, because a judge ordered his attorney to testify, basically on the grounds that she thought that Trump committed a crime and lied to his lawyer. So my first point is everybody ought to be patient. In the short term, Trump, as Dave, you indicated, is going to play it for all he can. Don't forget, he's the one who said he was going to be arrested. The DA didn't say that, and he raised $1.5 million, $2 million over the weekend. It's probably not as much as he hoped, and he is also. He tried to have a big demonstration in New York, and that sort of fizzled. So maybe his support isn't as great as he thinks. But once a grifter, always a grifter for Trump, and expect him to keep trying to find ways to play martyr and raise money. Joe Scarborough said today on Morning Joe that he thinks it's all about the money. And Trump wants to be handcuffed and paraded in, all that's going to be is an effort to raise money. But in the end, as Craig said, this is bad for Trump. He's never going to be elected president again. Somehow facing criminal charges, several counts, may help him with a small part of the Republican base. But especially with today's twisted politics, but it's not going to, in the long run, it's not going to help him. Look, I know the one thing I know is Trump's going to be buried as a presidential candidate. Even if this could by some means help him win a Republican nomination, because the party, all the good people in the party don't vote in the primaries, basically. he's not going to win a general election. He's already lost the general election twice in the popular vote, and he's going to lose this one even worse if he ever gets to be a candidate.
Yeah.
My thought is the Democrats ought to stay away from this completely. If the Democrats overreact, that will not help them. And it's likely to be bad for the Republicans too. But ironically, if somehow Trump were able to parlay this into a nomination, I'm sorry. The irony of it is, if this does knock Trump out of the race and the Republicans nominate somebody else, that could wind up helping the Republicans. Trump can't win, another Republican could. And that also may change President Biden's calculus about whether to run again.
You know, Craig, I would like to pivot a little bit, since we have talked in the past about the impact of the Ukraine war on American politics. And I noticed that yesterday, Governor DeSantis, who we had talked about at that program, has completely pushed away from his original statement that he thought that this was a territorial conflict. But before he did that, as you probably know, polls sunk for him. And I wonder if he's been able to recover from that early mistake in his presidential aspirations.
What we're a year away from voters, deciding who they wish to support in primaries, and so that's quite a bit of time. I suspect he can recover. To me, the concern is it's another sign, though, that Governor DeSantis isn't entirely grounded. That he looks to the issue of the day and tries to figure out how best to jump on the story in a way that will appeal to the people he believes are his constituency or his supporters. And then when he finds that has repercussions to a broader audience, and even has repercussions among his own supporters, he easily pivots to a different position. And I think in the past, this used to be very damaging kind of behavior. The press would hold you accountable, and the so-called flip-flop back and forth is a very large problem. It was going way back to George Bush and Bob Dole campaigning in New Hampshire. One of the most devastating ads accused Bob Dole of flip-flopping on issues. And so I don't know whether DeSantis is harmed by this particular incident, but I think it's part of a story where he is not entirely grounded. So you're not really sure where he's going to come out. And it absolutely plays into something that Al has talked a lot about, that candidates, especially candidates that have not gone through a national campaign before, play one game early on that does do real damage when you get to a general election. And DeSantis, I'm sure, will get wiser as he goes. This is probably a learning experience for him in the national political arena, that he's learned, and hopefully for him, for his supporters, he'll be more comfortable, more careful in terms of what position he stakes out, because it's one that he's going to be held to account for.
Al, no danger in flip-flopping anymore? I think DeSantis's problem is probably deeper, his problems are more deep than just flip-flopping. I really question whether he's ready for prime time. And, but the thesis of his campaign, at least at the start, was that he wanted to be mini Trump. Well, that doesn't get you very far. I mean, I always used to hear if you wanted a Democrat, you wanted the real thing, and we were always the moderates, so we weren't the real thing. But in any event, being mini Trump again, plays to a very narrow part of the whole national electorate. This statement on Ukraine, basically, he talking to a small part of the Republican Party, somebody who was going to run for president seriously, probably would have thought a little bit more before he did it. And now, if he tried to backtrack, I remember John Kerry. I was for it before I was against it. That's not a show of strength that helps you in the general election. I said before, I thought DeSantis would have a hard time on the national scene. I still believe that. I think there's an opening for another candidate, particularly if what we talked about at the beginning of this show happens and Trump gets knocked out by these criminal cases. I think the Republican primaries could be very interesting next year.
Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week. The president of the Craig Fuller fan club came by and a second ago me this book. Apparently, you're making several appearances in it.
So the story I was going to tell you is there's a picture of Roger Ailes, Bush, and me in a nondescript holding room off of the convention floor. Ailes is getting him ready to go give his speech, and I'm reminding him what we're doing, how the choreography worked. And I had taken a young guy and a young gal volunteer, and we took pictures of them behind the podium, and then one side and the other side to show Bush exactly what picture we wanted to get. So we would have it in his mind that where he needed to be on stage, because he was horrible on stage. And actually, the truth is, it worked great. But as I was briefing Bush, and Bush was studying this very carefully, Ailes wasn't saying anything, and then Roger says, "And I'll tell you something, pal. You screw this up, and we're nominating those two people."
Right.
Kids.